This is Midnight Alchemy with your host Jason Allen on the Left Coast Media Network. And now here's Jason.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever and whenever you are. This is Midnight Alchemy, and I am your train conductor for the evening, Jason Allen. Hello, everybody. It's good to be back with you all again. We have a fantastic show coming up. We have the Squatchfather Part 2, starring Alfred Santariga, man, and we are going to go deep on tons of stuff. So please buckle in. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Okay, first, let's tackle the news, shall we? Anyway, this is from UFOholic.com. Physicists decode strange crop circle with a binary code and alien face. Crop circles are a worldwide phenomenon that has captured the imagination of millions of people. Typically found in cornfields and other crops way out in the country, these circles often come with strange designs, including patterns that are incredibly difficult for our relatively insignificant human brains to decipher. Recently, a physicist from Finland's University of Helsinki provided a thought-provoking analysis on one of these strange patterns, an accompanying design that has people talking. Crop circles are a surprising phenomenon, and they seem to pop up in the most unexpected ways and most unexpected places. In 2002, in a field near Crabwood, Winchester, Hampshire, England, a famous crop circle appeared overnight. The crop circle has been documented, photographed, and researched by scholars all over the world. The circles are intricately designed and sewn into crop fields. Upon further research, we are given clues as to how they have been formed and perhaps whether or not a higher intelligence has been involved. Richard Taylor, a physicist from the University of Oregon, examined them closely and found that the nodes of these stalks are blasted out on one side as opposed to simply being fattened. This effect has been replicated by microwave heating, which causes water inside the crop to vaporize and become dislodged. When this happens, the crops flop over completely to one side. Crop circle artists are said to be using GPS devices, laser, and microwaves to create these incredible patterns in the cornfields that are the delight of UFO enthusiasts and the bane of local farmers. Now researchers have uncovered the chilling message accompanying these world-famous crop circles and what it could mean for the future of this phenomenon. Crop circles carry chilling message in a binary code, according to Paul Vigay, a British computer consultant who developed and supported RISC OS software for PCs. The crop circle has a purpose behind its bizarre and intricate coding. Vigay says the message was encoded in ASCII binary code, an 8-bit code used in computer programming. Meanwhile, the paper has been published on the circles, titled Crop Circles and the Life, at Parallel Space-Time Sheets. Here's what it had to say about the circles. Crabwood message consists of two parts. An alien picture and picture representing spirals like a bit sequence starting from the center of a picture and proceeding counterclockwise. It has been proposed that the message is coded using 9-bit code that 8-bit proportions obey ASCII code. If this is in fact true, the message reads as follows. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain is still coming in time. EELUVE. We don't know what that means. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. Petonkin, who also contributed to this, concludes that whoever made the circle is extremely artistically, technologically, and mathematically advanced to a point beyond belief. Okay, UFOholic has a few final thoughts on the crop circles. The question is, should we be asking ourselves now is, why are the findings like these from world-class researchers constantly dismissed without even so much as a second thought? Why does the mainstream media ignore them? And will things ever change? That is, of course, a rhetorical question, but in the meantime, let's do our best to share this information and anyone willing to learn. These researchers are doing a brilliant work and simply cannot be ignored any longer. So there we have it, folks. A good crop circle Story coming in from UFOaholic.com. If you want to check out the story, please get up on there and check it out. Okay, folks, it is interview time. Let's commence. Oh, man, I am excited. We have paranormal royalty in the house. Alfred Santariga is here. I got the New York Yankees cap on because, hey, you got to have Yankees pride. Tonight, we are going to talk about Bigfoot and we're going to talk about Dogman. Two things that, I've been really getting into lately, just so because it's so damn interesting, right? And so we're not only digging deep, folks, we are deep down there. So you may want to get your shovels out and get ready to go to China because we are going to dig deep. Alfred, how are you doing, man?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, yeah. Listen, if I can forget, I will forget everything. I've been known to do that. If I had my wife in the room, she would be nodding her head. And so can you talk about all the different societies and stuff that you're a part of, just so if people want to get up there and nose around on the interwebs, they can?
Yeah, okay. I'm the founder of the Bronxville Paranormal Society, aka BPS. Also, the founder and director of the New York State Sasquatch Organization, the New York State UFO Project, and the New York State Dogman Project. I'm also the director of the North American Dogman Project, New York State chapter, and I'm also a member of New York State MUFON chapter.
Oh, that is awesome. I'm already thinking, right? You're going through it, and I'm thinking, oh man, part 3 is gonna be great, Oh man. Okay, we got to get going on Bigfoot here because I've been so interested in it. Tell me, Alfred, let's begin at the begin. When did you first start getting, interested in Bigfoot and cryptids?
Well, my brother was a parapsychologist and he had a lot of books in the house on all aspects of the paranormal, and if he didn't have something on the abominable snowman, on Fridays at school, they would send us to the library to get a book to read over the weekend. And I was always taking something out on, the Yeti or Nessie or something to that effect. I was always taking something out on those things. I love that. I remember when I was about 12 years old, hanging out at the movies with my cousins. I think we were watching James Bond or something to that effect. And after the movie, the Patterson Gimlin trailer came on. And I remember, and I always had this intuition or gut feeling or whatever you want to call it, a vibe. I don't know. When I seen that trailer, I remember turning to like my cousin Dino and saying, "This is real," and taking like the most abuse you could possibly take from your cousins, between all of my cousins shredding me for thinking that Bigfoot was real. They just, that's how my family shows love, by breaking your balls. So the more they break your balls, the more they love you, And my brother took a lot of abuse from my cousins, my older cousins and my uncles, for being a parapsychologist. I mean, he was a money guy anyway. He had masters in that field, but he used to work with Han Holzer's partner, right-hand man, and that's how he got into going to California to get his degree in parapsychology. But I was always into every aspect of the paranormal. When I created BPS, we investigated all aspects, and we always included ghosts, cryptids, and UFOs in our investigations. We always, for some reason, like-minded people. Everybody had their specialty on the team, but I just think we all believed that everything was truly connected. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Everybody had their own theory on how it was connected, but everybody had that belief that it was all connected. And, as time goes on, you figure this stuff out, little tidbits. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It starts to come together after time. And the longer you're in the field, the more sensitive you get to energies. Different energies affect me different ways, where before it was just a gut feeling. Now I hear like a little voice in my head will tell me something like, don't go left, go right.
Yeah.
Or I'll get a metallic taste in my mouth, or my teeth will go numb, or pressure in my forehead, or my fingers will tingle. I mean, just you name it. I was talking to a friend of mine who's an author, and he says, "Oh, you have all the clairs, everything you're telling me are all the clairs, and I was like, well, I don't know about the clairs. This is just who I am, like I'll feel the wall and see what kind of image comes to my mind's eye. I don't know what that's called. That's just me doing it, instinctively. Something is telling me to feel the wall and get an image in my mind's eye. So now he tells me I have all the clairs. Okay, I have all the clairs. That's fine. But I'm not, I don't go out and say that I'm a psychic by any stretch of the imagination, because I can't do this at will. It comes to me, when it comes to me and it tells me, that's when I do it. I just can't. I'm like, I can't remote view, or I can't, just tell you what you're thinking and stuff like that. No, when I'm in an investigation, I'll get pulled one way. I'll hear a voice in my head, I'll smell something. I'll taste something. These are all tidbits of all the clairs, but these things just happen to me naturally. I don't try to bring it on. So I never claim to be psychic by any stretch of the imagination. But like I said, the longer you do this, the more you experience. I had a, what did they call it? And some, oh God, I can't think of the word. Well, never mind. We'll go a different way. Anyway, my very first Bigfoot experience, 1974, down in South Florida. My cousin Anthony. Anthony's 15. I'm 12. He's like a brother to me. We like I said, all my cousins lived in the same neighborhood, and at times you would hang out with one for a year, and then you'd be hanging out with another one for a year, And Anthony was like a brother to me. We were sent down to Florida every summer to my sister's house. It was like our summer camp, you know what I mean? Yeah. And my brother-in-law was an ex-Marine. He had an Italian restaurant in town, and he had a list of chores he would have us do every day. He wanted everything done by 12, because after like 1 o'clock, it just gets too hot in Florida in the summer to be out there, And, so we were down there, and we went down there. So we knew she lived in this giant square. It was called Sunshine Acres. It was out on the outskirts of a little town called Davie, Florida, and it was right on the outskirts of the Everglades. And there was canals all around it, and there was alligators in those canals. And it was a 1-lane bridge to get over to the property and 1 lane to get back, and that was it. You couldn't get 2 cars on that bridge at the same time, And it was a horse rancher in the south end and a cattle rancher in the east end, and so we knew all the kids in the neighborhood. We had dirt bikes. We did our work. We would do whatever my brother-in-law had plans for us to do. We were popcorning ceilings. We were painting. We were doing all kinds of stuff, Yeah. And we had our dirt bikes that we rode in the swamp. And a friend of ours' father owned the horse ranch, and we took horses out on tours. We took tours out in the swamp. The horses knew where they were going. We were just there to make sure nobody fell into the Everglades, into the swamp, Yeah. And we shoveled crap to make a few dollars for beer, you know what I mean? Sure. So we'd go in the woods at night and have bonfires. Well, summer is going on, and this particular summer there was a drought in South Florida. There was the Everglades was on fire. And a lot of the creatures that were in the Everglades were coming north out of the Everglades towards inland. Yeah. And so us being on the outskirts of the Everglades, we would hear, and we would see on the news, we would hear like reports of a skunk ape. Sheriff seen the skunk ape. Yeah. The town police were called to this lady's house. They thought it was a peeping Tom. When they got there, it was a skunk ape looking in our window. And, so it was all, and we'd hear it on the TV, we'd hear it on the radio, we'd read it in the newspaper. And we didn't know what to think of it because like I was like, what the hell is a skunk ape? You know what I mean? I thought Bigfoot at 12 years old. I thought Bigfoot only lived in the Pacific Northwest. That's where I thought he was, and down in South Florida. Get the hell out of here, And one night we're up and we're watching like Don Kirshner's rock concert, like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Midnight special, man.
Yeah, the midnight special, and something goes by the house. Now, my sister had like 3 acres of land, and the front of the house was opened with a circular driveway with a fountain. But the sides of the house in the back was fenced in with a 6-foot fence. She had 2 large German shepherds, and something walked by the house, and the dogs went absolutely insane. And I grabbed the dogs and put them in the garage so they wouldn't wake up the whole house. But it stunk to high heaven. Whatever went by the house stunk to high heaven.
Yeah.
So the next morning, we're sitting at breakfast with my sister and my brother, and we're telling them, man, something went by the house. I said around 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30. That stunk like, now the way I described it was like 1,000 skunks. You know what I mean? It's how bad it was. Yeah. I said the dogs went ballistic. I had to put them in the garage. And my brother-in-law turned to me and said, "Oh, it must have been the skunk ape." I just looked at him like, what? What's skunk ape? I mean, and he's like, yeah, skunk ape. And then my sister's saying, yeah, it's like, it's the Bigfoot version of Florida. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. And I thought they were pulling my leg, you know what I mean? Even though we were hearing about it on all the media outlets, I just thought she was pulling my legs, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't, I just couldn't get my head around the name skunk ape, So then a few nights go by and we're up, one Friday night, I think it was, we're watching wrestling at midnight, right? And we're jumping around the couch and wrestling's over and we go to sleep. She had a sunroom that faced the front of the house and she had a queen size pull out bed. And in front of the bed, she had a giant picture window. It must have been 8 feet long and 4 feet high. Yeah. And you looked out the window, you seen the garden and the fountain, but she had a couch down there. So we pull it out and we're laying in bed and the house had sensor lights all around it. Me and my cousin Anthony are laying in bed and the sensor lights go off. I mean, they go on and we see this giant shadow go across the front of the wall in front of us. Ooh, and we're like, what the hell is that? I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the dogs go off. They go crazy. I jump up, I drag the dogs in the garage because if my brother-in-law wakes up, everybody's getting their ass kicked, you know what I mean? So not only the dogs getting beaten, but we're getting beaten too. So I drag the dogs into the garage and I do a belly crawl to the window. She had this curtain. She had like a drape or a curtain you pulled down, and I forgot what it's called. A shade. She had a shade. So I'm peeking out the shade, the corner of the shade. Meanwhile, my cousin Anthony is frozen in the bed. He's not moving. And I look out the window, and there in the middle of the driveway is this thing to me that looks like King Kong. Okay. It's humongous. It's 4-5 feet wide. I mean, as much as I looked at its face, I was, my cousin was a weightlifter. My cousin had a big back for, 15-year-old kid. I was more martial arts kind of guy, mm-hmm. And his thing was wide and it looked like as wide as it was the same thing thickness too, because this thing was thick. Dang. And so I'm looking at this thing and it sees its reflection in the glass and it does this incredible Hulk flex and scream. And now this scream goes through you, goes through the glass, it goes through you. It's like you're in front of a amplifier at a Metallica concert, you know what I mean? Getting blown away. And it had canines. Its eyes were red. It had a conical head. It had a red tint to it. Even though it was dark color, when the sensor lights hit it, it had like a red tint to it. Now, I thought it was screaming at me. Hindsight being 2020, it must have seen this reflection in the window and thought it was another creature, and then it walked around to the side of the house. We had an empty lot. This development had a lot of empty lots. There was only a handful of houses on it and these two giant farms, the horse ranch at one end and the cattle farmer at the other. And it starts to walk around the house. I grab my cousin Anthony and drag him out of the bed. Say, come on, come on, come on. We got to check this thing out, right?
Yeah,
and we run into the bathroom on that side of the house that's in between the kids' rooms. We leave the lights off. It's got a black screen, tinted glass, and we're looking at this thinking there's no way you can see us because the lights are off. And as this thing is walking by the fence, and this is how I guess its height, the fence was 6 feet tall. And this thing was at least 3 feet taller than the fence. Okay.
Yeah.
And the whole time it's walking along the fence line, it's looking at us like it can see us.
Damn. Yeah.
And we kept ducking down below the window. And then we look back up and it would still be looking. At one point, it stops. It grabs a wild watermelon. It takes a bite out of it. There's nothing left but two nubs. It drops the nubs and it starts walking towards the back of the house. So I grab Anthony. Come on, let's go out in the patio. Because my sister had a beautiful screened-in patio, you know. Yeah. Again, we run out to the patio. We leave the lights off. It's a black screen, thinking no one's going to be able to see us. As it passes the back of the house, the sensor lights go off. So we can see it clear as day. And it's just, and the whole time it's walking, it's looking at us. It's looking at us as it's walking. And we're looking at it. And behind our house, there was our neighbor had a man-made lake. Now, we would swim in that lake all the time because it was much cooler than the pool. The pool was like piss, swimming in piss, you know, but the man-made lake was always cooler. It squatted down, put one hand down, and with the other hand, it cupped the water, and it drank the water out of the man-made lake. And then it walked off into the swamp where we would go and do our bonfires and ride our dirt bikes and take the trails out and everything. And then it just went off. It just started screaming and screaming and screaming. And so the next morning, my sister and my brother-in-law, they don't wake up. They don't hear anything. We tell them what happened. They think we're bullshit. And I go, yeah, we're bullshitting. Come with us. We drag them to the side of the house where it walked along the fence line. And there were 18-inch tracks walking along the fence line in the sand. So my brother-in-law says, I'm coming back at lunchtime with some mortar and stuff. I'm gonna cast these. I'm gonna put them up on my bar. He had a beautiful bar at the house, you know. Yeah. So I'm gonna put one up in the restaurant and one up in the bar in the house, you know, as a conversation piece. Mm-hmm. So he says, so we say, yeah, okay. And he goes, make sure nobody wrecks them. I said, okay. So we're working, and he goes to work at the restaurant in the morning to start preparing for the lunch special and everything. And he got busy. He never came home. 3:00, the horse guy went out with a group of people, and they always rode right by our fence line because there was no house there, and they destroyed the tracks. You know, with the horses destroyed the tracks, so we were never able to cast them. So when he came home, he was like, and he was a little upset that he couldn't get home that day, and somebody had called out, so he had to stick around the restaurant and. So we never cast any tracks, but so you know now we're really freaking out. We're like we can't believe. So I'm talking to all my friends in the neighborhood, and I'm like, "Is this like I didn't believe it was was real, And they were like, "Yeah, every time when it's hot like this thing comes out of the swamp. When it's hot like every now and then. We've been going down to Florida for like 5 years straight, and we never encountered this, But again." That year was super hot. The Everglades were on fire, so stuff was being drawn inland. Yeah. Okay, so a few nights go by, and it's pretty quiet for a week or so. One night, my brother-in-law comes home from the restaurant about around 12. And he used to bring home all the burnt pizzas that the guys burnt. And that would be like me and my cousin Anthony's midnight snacks. Right? We did a whole pie. We did a whole pie by ourselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we were sitting in the back. We're sitting in the patio. And he's like, any action tonight? And we're like, nah, pretty quiet night, yada, yada, yada. And we're all sitting there, me, my cousin Anthony, my brother-in-law, my sister. having some pizza because being from New York, we like our pizza well done anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't burnt for me, but it was burnt for the people down in Florida. But anyway, all of a sudden, we hear like a 30-30 going off. Bang, 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 right? So we run to the front of the house, and you can see the muzzle flashes coming from the horse rancher's farm, And so we know who, our friend's father owns that ranch. So my brother-in-law says, jump on your dirt bikes, go down there and see, because even though we can see the muzzle flashes, it's like 3 blocks away. You know what I mean? Because this development is like a giant square, which is like 2 miles square. You know what I mean? So it's a big development. And so we jump on our dirt bikes and we just fly across all the empty lots and everything. We race down there. We see our friend. We're like, at this point, all the other neighbors are out, because they hear the gunshots. They're all coming out. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm talking to my friend. And he said, oh, the skunk ape tried to get my father's horse. Now, this guy had just brought a horse in from Wyoming, Montana. I'm not really sure. It was a Mustang or what it was, but it was wild. Okay. And he couldn't put it in the stalls with the other horses because it would kick. And it made all the other horses nervous. So he'd leave it in the corral. And he had a Native American Seminole Indian coming every day to work him, to try to break him, Mm-hmm. And so he left his horse in the corral. And this 9-foot, 1,000-pound creature somehow snuck up on his horse and grabbed him by its hindquarters. Now, the only thing I can think of, and this is not my theory, but this is the sheriff's theory and the homeowner's theory, the rancher's theory. The creature grabbed the horse from behind, and the horse must have kicked out, kicked the creature, and the creature let go, and then the horse jumped out of the corral and ran into the pasture. Yeah. And once it got into the pasture, the creature wasn't going to catch it. By the time all that, the rancher heard all that commotion, he came out shooting. He was shooting. He wasn't playing any games. Back then in South Florida, Davie was a cowboy town.
Okay.
Every pickup truck had three rifles in the window. Yeah. The biggest thing that happened there was the rodeo on the 4th of July. It was a cowboy town, and you didn't play. They just didn't play back then.
Right.
So the next day, so the sheriff is there, and he's talking to the homeowner, and he's saying, okay, we're gonna pick up our patrols because you guys are getting a lot of sightings out here, and you guys are on the outskirts, and we're gonna pick up the patrols around here. Maybe me and a deputy will do a simultaneous patrol a couple of times during the night, Mm-hmm. And so the next morning I ride back over there with my cousin. We both ride over to talk to the kid, and the Seminole Indian is there, and he rides out to the pasture to get the horse, and he brings the horse back to the corral. And when the horse gets back to the corral, the horse has handprints on its hindquarters, not claw marks. Yeah. Hand, like if I was to grab you by your wrist and squeezed as hard as I could, it left handprints on this horse's hindquarters. Yeah, it was crazy. I never seen anything like that. The sheriff was like besides himself, Yeah. So he's like, okay, when he's seen that, he says, oh, we definitely got to spend more time out here, And so there, a couple of nights go by, nothing's happening. Every now and then you'd hear screaming or going off in the swamp. But, no one's going in the swamp at 12 o'clock at night when this creature is going off, And my brother-in-law had friends flying down from New York. And him and my sister were taking him out to Miami for dinner and dancing. And he said, you guys got to watch the kids, babysit the kids. showed us where the guns were in the house. But keep the dogs in the house with you. Don't let them in. Don't leave them in the yard, And we're like, yeah, don't worry, we got this, no problem. We didn't really expect anything anyway, Yeah. And they went out, they did their thing. They rolled in around 2:00 in the morning. And of course, as soon as they pulled into the driveway, the dogs went crazy. And we all run out to the car to meet them. My brother-in-law had just bought a brand new Lincoln Continental Mark IV or something like that with the sunroof. I mean, it was a gorgeous car. And so my sister comes out of the car. He gets out of the car and he's talking, any action? Like, no action. And then we hear the most blood curdling cry. Let's call it a cry.
Yeah.
It just froze you to, it just scared the living daylights out of you, because you had never heard anything like this before. And we didn't know what the hell it was. It was just horrible. Scared my sister so much, she grabbed both dogs and ran into the house. We're looking at each other, me, my brother, and my cousin, and we're just looking at it like, what the hell was that? You know, it wasn't the creature, it was something else. And then from the cattle ranchers, we see a double barrel shotgun go off, both barrels, boom. Yeah. So my brother says, jump in the car, let's go see what's going on, right? Yeah. So my cousin Anthony takes shotgun. I jump in the back seat. I tell my brother to open up the sunroof. I'm hanging out the sunroof, right? Yeah. We drive to the corner. As soon as we get to the corner, the deputy passes us. Now we're stuck behind the deputy, and he's going like 2 miles an hour. And you could see at the far end of the development, because the one thing about Florida, it's flat, right? Yeah. So at the far end of the development, you can see like the sheriff's car doing the patrol, but he's like a mile away, right? So we're stuck behind the deputy, and the deputy's got his spotlight looking to the left, because to the left is where the swamp is. There's all homes around us to the right and empty lots. And as everybody's looking left, the creature runs out in the darkness, and the deputy hits it with the police car.
Oh, man.
Creature goes down, takes down a school sign or something, right? That's supposed to be unbendable. Up to 100-mile-an-hour winds, these things don't bend. Well, he pancaked this sign, and it bent, right? Now everybody turns around, because we hear the police car hit it. My brother-in-law jams on the brakes. He's maybe 4 to 6 feet behind the police car. Creature gets up, limps over to the police car. My brother-in-law hits it with the high beams. I'm outside the moonroof looking at this thing. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? This is too close. You know what I mean? I'm way too close. Yeah. And the creature looks down at the deputy, and you can see the deputy because of the lights. You can see his silhouette. And the creature does a hammer punch, boom, right on the front of the car. And he screams at the deputy. And the back of the car comes off the ground. Yeah. And the deputy is just holding onto the steering wheel, and it limps off into the swamp. The sheriff turns the corner, sees the police car in the middle of the road totaled, puts his lights on, comes down, starts taking the deputy's, statement, what's going on. He tells the deputy tells him, the sheriff says, well, back then they carried the shotgun in between the two, the driver and the passenger. Yeah. And the sheriff said, well, why didn't you take the shotgun and shoot the goddamn thing, And he was like, shotgun wasn't big enough, Shotgun wasn't big enough. I don't know what he had in the shotgun, probably double-aught buck or something like that. Yeah. But he just said to the sheriff, shotgun wasn't big enough, Mm-hmm. And we're telling the sheriff has taken our statements, because we're right there. We've seen it, everybody's giving the same statement. When the cattle rancher comes racing up to the sheriff and says, you got to come back to my farm and see what this damn creature did to my prize bull. Oh. Now, this guy had a Brahma bull, white Brahma bull with a hump in its neck. And this bull was the size of a minivan. Okay. If it was 2,500 pounds, it weighed an ounce. Okay. Now, this particular rancher did not like me and my cousin too much, because every time we would come around the corner on our dirt bikes, we would always be doing like 100 miles an hour. And not to go down on the gravel, we'd have to go up on his lawn around his mailbox. And we would tear up his lawn all the time. And my brother-in-law was constantly reseeding this guy's lawn, right? But there was a time where I used to jog that 2 miles every day, right? Because I was into martial arts. I wanted to stay in shape. And the fence line was only about 4 feet high, where the cows and the Brahma bull and everything is. And one day I'm running, I'm jogging. There's a lady down the street who's got a St. Bernard, like Cujo. Every time I run past this dog's house, this dog wants to eat me, right? Luckily, he's behind this metal fence. Well, one day I'm passing the fence. The lady who owns the house is coming around the corner. She hits the automatic gate opener because she just wants to pull into her driveway. She hits the gate opener. The gate opens. The dog comes running out. Boom. Now the dog is chasing me. He's running me down like a guided missile. There's no trees in Florida to climb like here in New York, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, this dog is gaining on me. And I was a pretty fast kid, you know, and this dog is gaining on me. And the only way for me to get away from is to dive over that fence into that pasture with that Brahma bull. So I dive over the fence. The dog jumps up onto the fence. The Brahma bull sees me sitting there in the pasture, sees the dog going nuts, and he starts to trot over. You know, like what's going on? That is bull. If he wants to go through this fence is not holding him back, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, while the bull is focused on the dog, I'm going to use the cows as shields, and I'm going to work my way out the front gate, you know?
Yeah.
Lady's calling the dog back. The dog comes back. By the time the dog comes back, I'm just about getting to the front gate. The bull's looking for me. I'm already out the front gate, you know. But I use the cows as protection because the cows, I figured he wouldn't charge the cows to get to me.
Right.
And so I seen this bull up close and personal. This thing was a beast, I tell you. So when the rancher says, you got to see what this damn creature did to my bull, in my head, I'm saying, no way. There's no way this thing is taking that bull down.
Right.
So the sheriff says, okay, I'll follow you back to your ranch. So we go around the deputy and we follow the sheriff back to the cattle rancher's farm. We get there and he's flashing his spotlight on the side of the car through the pasture. And there in the middle of the pasture is this Brahma bull bleeding out with no head. Preacher ripped the head off the Brahma bull. Then he's panning down a little bit more, 100 yards away in a different direction. The head is laying 100 yards away. The creature just threw the head away, you know? Yeah. And I'm thinking the skunk ape was in there going after a calf or something, you know, and because the cows had babies, you know, and the bull seen the creature and did what the bull did because those Brahma bulls are ornery to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I knew that because when the rodeo would come to town, I loved to see them broncs, you know, and I would talk to the cowboys and they would say, yeah, those damn Brahma bulls, they're ornery, you know. I'm like, what's the difference between that and the other bull? You know, they know those ones right there. You got to watch your back with those bulls, you know. I was like, okay. So he ripped the head off of this bull. At this point, the sheriff says, I need help. And he calls in the stadies and he calls in the county police and they come with horses and dogs and helicopters and they search the swamp high and low all night long. They never found a thing. And now we thought that since we were hearing about it all summer long, that there was going to be newspaper reporters there and TV people there, and they were going to interview us because we were eyewitnesses. We were going to be TV stars, you know, our 10 minutes of fame, right? You know, we thought nobody came to house to interview us. We would drive to the Winn-Dixie because at 15, my cousin had a license down there. So he would drive. We drove to the Winn-Dixie. We bought all the papers that they had. No mention of anything in the papers. Nothing, like it never happened. And I was like, what the hell? How could this be possible? Now, I had posted this experience in the Skunk Ape Museum in South Florida. And a woman for the BFRO, her name was Marie Monolith or something like that. She reached out to me. She said, Al, I want to do this story and I want to put it in the BFRO website. Would you mind? I said, absolutely not. And she goes on to tell me that she was the same age as me and she lived in the next town over. and her father had a business in Davie, and he would hear he would come home and tell him all kinds of story what happened. And her uncle was a cop in the Cooper City, which was the next town to the south of us. She lived in the next town to the east of us. Okay, and he would go over and he would tell them stories about how they would get reports of a black man peeping in the window, and the old lady would be nervous, and the cops would go there and they'd come around both ends. As soon as they hit it with the flashlight, it would be a skunk ape. It would see the cops, it would run off and dive into the swamp and swim away. But they had two sets. She said they had two sets of books, the official report and the unofficial report. And her uncle told her that he was going to give her his unofficial book so she could put out a book about all these experiences, all these skunk ape stuff that happened in South Florida around that time. Now, what she did for me was she went in and she got all the newspaper articles from that summer, the summer before and the summer after, and she put them all into my story on the BFRO. Yeah. And then she I love this woman. She went above and beyond the call of duty. She actually got an aerial shot of Sunshine Acres, the big square, and she marked that's all homes now, and the swamp is all drained and it's homes there. But she marked everything, like the cattle rancher was here and the horse rancher was here and the swamp was back here where we rode the horses and all of this stuff. And she put a report out there. And if anybody wants to go see it, I don't know what the number of it off my head, but if you go to South Florida Skunk Ape Experience 1974, it'll come up. It's really, really long. And in there is a picture of the creature that I seen. Sevilla Irwin is an artist. She works with them. She's a very famous artist. She does a lot of paranormal stuff, and she does a lot of conferences as well. And she's a sweetheart. And she was living in Texas and she would call me like every other day and say, does it look like this? Does it look like we would go back and forth, back and forth. And she actually did the artist rendering of what I seen, So that picture is in there as well in that report. So you get to see everything, the whole area and how she laid it out was really amazing. That particular summer, a friend of mine, local kid, he was a real little rebel, you know what I mean, and never wore shoes and walked over the gravel. Nothing hurt his feet. He could climb fences, and it was just amazing, And him and the local kids, they would all swim in the canals in the swamp, and they would say, you got to swim down at this end of the canal. They called it the turnaround. They said the water came in, turned around, and went out. And so the alligators don't come in the turnaround. And me and my cousin are like, you kids are out of your mind. There are fish in the turnaround. There are frogs in the turnaround. There are turtles in the turnaround. There are snakes in the turnaround. Why wouldn't the alligators go in the turnaround? There's plenty of food for them, But these kids we would go fishing. And after about 2 hours of fishing, they'd all jump in and start swimming, And, so one day, me and my cousin Anthony are in the turnaround fishing, and an alligator is sunning himself. And he's coming in on the tide. He's floating in, and we're just looking at him, and he's sleeping. He's asleep. He doesn't even know where he is. He's just floating. And he wakes up, and he realizes where he is. And hand to God, this thing ran on the top of the water to get out of the turnaround. We just looked at each other like, did you just see that? And I turned to my cousin, I go, did you? He goes, yeah. He goes, that's crazy. That alligator literally ran on the top of the water to get out of there. So I told my friend this, and he's like, I told you, they don't come in the turnaround. I was like, oh, yeah. He goes, I think, and he says it was his theory at the time. He said, I think these skunk apes have lairs under the water in the swamps. And he says, I think once they get into that water and they go under the water, they could swim into a canal that'll bring them into an underground caverns. He says, I'm going to look for the underground cavern in a turnaround. He goes, help me. And I was like, you're out of your mind. I'm not going in there. First of all, you could get caught up in the cattails and drown, right? Sure. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. He's bobbing and weaving. He's going around for like an hour. And I'm sitting on my dirt bike, and he's like, well, he comes up out of the water, and he's really excited. I said, I found it. I found it. He goes, I found it. It's a hole like this. I found it. And I'm like, he goes, I'm going. And I go, dude, don't go in. Don't go in. I said, please don't go in. It's probably an alligator den. You're going to get eaten by a mother alligator. Please don't go in. I'm not out in 5 minutes. You jump on your bike and you ride to my house and you get my brothers and you have them come get me. I didn't have a watch, so I'm counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, right there, right? Yeah. Because I didn't have a watch. And he jumps in, he swims in. He says, eventually, he says he pops out on the underground cavern. He says there's all like caves around in a circle. He says it stunk to high heaven. It smelled. It burnt his eyes. It burnt his mouth. He swims back out, and he's bouncing off the walls. I mean, I had to hold this kid down. He was jumping up and down. And I'm like, dude, what's he goes, I found it. I found it. I found it. You got to come in. You got to come with me. I got to prove it to you that I found it. And I was like, and he smelled like a skunk ape. He smelled to high heaven, you know? And all he had on was a bathing suit, but this was on his skin, the funk, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not going in. I go, dude, think about this. If your father woke up in the middle of the night to take a piss and he's seen somebody in his house, what is he going to do? He's going to shoot him before he asks any questions. Right. So what do you think these creatures are going to do if you pop your skinny little head up and they see you? They're going to pop your head right off like a cork. I said, I'm not going in there, you know? And he was like, all right. He goes, but you got to promise me. You got to promise me you don't tell anybody, not even your cousin. He says, because if the authorities find out about it, they're going to come in here and they're going to blow all these caverns up, and we won't even have a place to ride our bikes and do horses and stuff like that. I go, listen, I won't tell anybody. And I never told anybody for like 40 years. We were coming back from Florida to New York. I told my cousin Anthony, I can't wait to get home to tell my brother about this. He's going to lose his mind. And my cousin Anthony's like, you can't tell your brother. I was like, why not? Yeah. So if you tell your brother, then my father's going to find out. My mother's going to find out. Everybody's going to find out. And they're going to think we're crazy for telling this story. And everybody's going to break our chops. And I goes, if you do that, if that's what I'm going to kick your ass. And I didn't, you know, me and my cousins, we all loved each other like brothers, but, you know, everybody got on everybody's nerve. We all fought, you know, even though he was bigger than me, everybody fought everybody, you know? Yeah. And I didn't feel like fighting my cousin Anthony. So I was like, all right, you know what? I won't say nothing. I won't say nothing to nobody. Of course, I told my 2 best friends in the neighborhood, but I didn't tell any of my family members. And my brother wrote a book called Frank Santariga, Paranormal Family and Friends. And he reached out to my sister, and my sister said, talk to your brother. Your brother's the one with all the experiences, you know? Yeah. And I told him about the skunk ape thing. So then he reached back out to my sister to validate it, because my brother's crazy about validating everything. And she told him, yes, I remember that summer was crazy. Now, my brother-in-law had passed away, and my cousin Anthony had passed away. So it was just me and my sister were the only two to actually validate the story. So and that didn't come out till like 40 years later, you know, when my brother wrote the book, because only 2 people I ever told were my 2 best friends, Richie and Eddie, and that was it, you know? And I said, whatever you guys do, don't say nothing around Anthony, because if you do, Anthony's going to kick all 3 of our asses, you know? And they're like, no, we won't say anything in front of your cousin Anthony, because they knew Anthony was nuts, you know? Yeah. But that was my first Bigfoot experience, and right, you know, so I'm not a believer, I'm a knower, you know what I mean? Yeah. I seen it up close and personal. Yeah. And I know a lot of people claim that the skunk apes in Florida are tall and skinny and actually shorter than the ones in the Pacific Northwest or the ones up here in New York. That may be true, but the one I seen looked like King Kong. Yeah, he was a massive. He was definitely an alpha, you know what I mean? Oh yeah. And I can't imagine the strength this creature had to stop that Brahma bull in a charge, number one, and number 2, rip its head off. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mind-boggling.
When you were talking, that was my first question, man. What power that sucker must have had to rip, be able to rip a head off a Brahma bull. I've seen plenty of Brahma bulls, and you're right, they're like trucks, man. They're huge. So, I mean, if somebody was able to actually have that sort of power to rip off a head, yeah, I'm staying away from it,
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember if the bull had its horns sheared, cut off, nubbed. I don't remember because I don't remember. All I remember how big it was, and it was white. So even if its horns were cut flat, so they wouldn't, kill anybody.
Yeah.
For that thing to grab those horns and stop that charging bull, it's just the strength to do that, and then to just twist and rip that head off.
Crazy.
I can't even comprehend it. I tell people all the time, be careful what you wish for, because when you see these, everybody's like, just want to see one. I just want to see one. When you see one up close and personal, and I don't mean 100 yards away, and I don't mean running in front of you in a car. I mean, you're on a hiking trail and the thing steps out in front of you, 10, 15, 20 feet in front of you. When you see this thing, your eyes, your brain won't be able to comprehend what your eyes are seeing. Your brain just can't comprehend it because these things aren't supposed to exist. And I tell people that, they say, oh, how come this one didn't take a picture, that one didn't take a picture? Because your brain can't comprehend what your eyes are seeing. Your brain is not saying, oh, snap a picture. Your brain is saying, what the hell is standing in front of me? Because it's massive. When I tell you they're massive, 5 feet wide, 3 feet thick. I mean, just monsters. I mean, just monsters. They're truly are. I mean, I believe there are people. They are people. They have human DNA. But I mean, the power that they have and the size and strength is just beyond.
Right. Yeah. Here in the Pacific Northwest, usually the median average I've heard is 9 to 12 feet. But so the 9-foot skunk ape, totally jives. I only have one experience, and I never saw it. So let me state that at the beginning. We were out camping up by Mount Hood in the forest, and my brother had a friend along, and we're down by the river, and we're just hanging out. Well, my brother's friend went across the river into the woods, and so I hear a big, huge scream right from him. And he's running. I mean, he's running. He gets into the river. He trips a little bit, and he's like, I swear a bear's after me or something, right? And I was like, oh, geez. First we're like, oh, man. But, in the back of our heads, like, yeah, right. Bear. But then whatever it was, started chucking boulders. And not like rock. I mean, we're talking
boulders.
Stuff. He just chucking them. And the first that ain't no bear,
No, absolutely not.
We've been born and bred a little bit on the lore and the mythos of Bigfoot, right? So I mean, anyone up north, up in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, I mean, they're at least open to the possibility that there is one, right? But most people, we just kind of accept it and move on, right? And going back to the Brahma bull, dude. I mean, I remember hearing a story one time. I'm out at Yellowstone, and they have, of course, buffalo there. And these buffalo, dude, they are huge. I mean,
huge.
Yeah, I saw one standing next to a big old Ford truck, and it overshadowed it. And one time when we were out there, the ranger said, "No, you can't go up into this area, right?" And they're like, all right, must be bears or something. That's the line that they said. Well, there were some Native Americans in the area. And of course, we would start, talking with them. They're like, no, that's no bears, man. Let me tell you who it is. And I'm like, no freaking way, man. Because they said openly, the rangers know exactly what's going on. Of course, you can't hurt the tourist trade. So it's magically bears or so forth.
Yeah,
but let me tell you something. It ain't no bear that took down a huge buffalo.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, I know exactly. To be eyewitness to that. I mean, see, I can only imagine. I've never had any eyewitness accounts, but something that large banging on the police car, I always refer to those moments as poop your pants moments
Yeah,
because you're right. I mean, it's something that your mind can't even comprehend. What do? We go deer in the headlights, right? We're like, what the
yeah,
heck is that?
absolutely.
As our mind
Yeah,
is trying to catch up to us. And all I've got to say to that is, wow, you know.
yeah. No, it's
Uh,
it's mind-boggling. Yeah, no. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, I have three nieces that work in national parks. They're all park rangers, and they told me straight up when they became, once they got their degree in biology or whatever, become official rangers, they get an official handbook, and in the handbook it tells you what the proper protocol is if campers come across Bigfoots,
yeah.
and it also tells you what the proper protocol is if campers come across Dogman,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's two different protocols. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it's a Bigfoot, and my nieces really don't like to discuss the Dogman side of things. They don't care about talking about Bigfoot, but they really don't like to talk about the Dogman. But they
Yeah.
say Uncle Al, and I'm very close with all of them. Uncle Al, yeah, if a camper comes across, or if one comes into a campsite, then we take that camper and we move them to another site,
Yeah.
and that's it. And we give that site, the Bigfoot has its roam over there, because they really don't feel that the Bigfoot are dangerous, But if a dog man comes into a campsite, they move everybody on that side of the mountain to the other side, and they close that whole side of the mountain down. And they say they're doing something there. They're
Yeah.
working on that side of it, and nobody's allowed to go to that side of the mountain. And they just shut the whole thing down, and that's it. And you're
Yeah.
not allowed up there at any point in time until they feel it's safe enough to go up there. They won't even let people go up there. I mean, it's just like, when you look at this giant park and this giant mountain, and they'll shut one side of it down, that's saying they believe that these creatures are dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and I'm lucky enough to have nieces that work in three separate states, national parks, forests. I
Yeah.
also am lucky enough to have a nephew who's a Marine major
Mm-hmm.
out of South Carolina, and I I get a lot of, well, I get, he was head of like a helicopter squad or something, and
Mm-hmm.
they would go from South Carolina to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and every time his unit would go up to go to Florida to transport stuff, as soon as he got up, he said orange balls would come out of the ocean and watch him. He said, and there were, and he were other pilots would say, "Hey, Mage, what are we supposed to do with these things? Are we supposed to engage?" And his orders from the colonels would just say, "Leave them alone, do what you got, what you're scheduled to do, and make believe they're not there."
Yeah.
And that's what that was the protocol. Just leave those orange balls of light alone. Let them follow you. Let them watch you. Go to Florida, do your transport, come back like that. And that's what they did. That was the procedure. And they never had any issues with them. You know what I mean? So I don't know if there were pilots before that protocol went into effect that actually engaged and then something happened, but
Yeah.
they don't engage anymore.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
so Alfred goes back up to New York, right? And this time, I mean, the torch is lit. You're fully, you're not, like you said, a knower. Okay. How long does it take you to get up into the Catskills and things like that and start poking around?
Well, I was 12 years old at the time, and I had what do they call that? PTSD for
Yeah.
like 3 years.
Mm.
My father, my bedroom was like a prison cell. Okay, it was like 8 feet long and 5 feet wide, or 6 feet wide. It was actually a front porch at one time, and my father closed it off. He was a carpenter. He closed it off to make a bedroom out of it. and the only windows he had in his carpenter shop was big picture windows that you would put on the front of a house. So my bedroom had this big picture window, and we had a little garden in front of our house. It was maybe, you know, 10 by 10, you know what I mean? With a little bit of bushes and some rose gardens for my mother or something, you know what I mean? And I used to think that the Bigfoot was going to step in over those little shrubs, because the bushes were only like 2 feet high, you know? And I used to think it was going to put its arm through that glass window, and I couldn't get further enough away from that window because his arms are so long, they hang down to their knees, and it was going to grab me and drag me out of that window, you know? And I had that nightmare for like 3 years, you know what I mean, before I actually passed. And then, you know, girls came into the picture, and cars came into the picture, and who's thinking about Bigfoot now, you know what I mean? But no, it took quite a while for me to get back rolling into the paranormal, you know what I mean? Of course, I did things with my brother. And I went out with him and investigations, but it was mostly ghost stuff with him, you know. I did more ghost stuff with a couple of my best friends, like my friend Harry and my friend Eddie. We did like 2 or 3 different ghost things. 2 were up in the Catskills. My girlfriend at the time's father had a house up on one of the mountains. So we would go up there. Not so much in the summers because they used it in the summers, but we would go up in the winters to go skiing, you know? Yeah. And so we would go up there, and we used to pass this burnt hotel all the time, you know? And my brother had told us a story about it, how there was a tragic fire and a lot of people lost their lives and yada, yada, yada. So one weekend we were going up, and I said, let's go by this hotel. I was in school down in the city. I was going to school for photography for the Center of Media Arts. So I said, let's go by this hotel and let's take some photographs, and let's go in. You know, we were there with our girlfriends. We had the whole weekend, you know. We were going to ski all day, party all night. And so we get there, and as we pull into the driveway, and it was one of those driveways that went down and came up on the other side, and we went down, parked, and we all got out. It was me, Eddie, and Harry, and our girlfriends. And I had a couple of cameras that I gave a couple. And as we were going down in the driveway, my stomach just dropped. You know, like when your stomach drops, like when you go on a plane or something. I had that feeling, and it's just like, I don't know if we should be doing this, man. You know, now I'm thinking, no, we shouldn't be doing this. But at this point, everybody else is all psyched up to do it, you know. Yeah. So I go in, and there were a lot of burnt. The hotel was half up, half down. It was knocked down. It was burnt. I went in, and I walked in, and I looked around. I was in the lobby, and there was a staircase that went up to the right, and a banisters that went across. And half of the steps were missing, so you couldn't even get up there, you know. And I took one photo of the banisters because I felt like there was something there looking at me. And everybody went around, and then when I went back to school that Monday, I developed the pictures, and you know, there was some orbs and stuff in some of the photographs, and but in that one photograph that I took, there was a little girl looking at me through the banister. And it just made my heart drop. Made my heart drop. And I was like, it's like, how, like, she was like so scared. Like, so, I mean, she must have perished in the fire. I don't know. And so when I showed everybody the picture, and of course, all the girls got hysterical. Our girlfriends were like crying, hysterical. She never went there, bada beep, bada boop. You know, my friends were all psyched up. Oh, we got to go back, you know? And I'm like, we went back. But when we went back, I went in the back of the hotel, and I dug a little hole, and I put that photograph in a hole, and I said a little prayer, and I buried it. I put some holy water over the top of it. I made a little cross out of popsicle sticks, you know what I mean? I said a prayer over it, and I said, please forgive me for taking this photograph of you and your worst moment, yada yada yada. And we left it there, and then Harry was going to school. Harry was going to school up in Connecticut for mechanics. Harry was always a mechanic guy. He was always working on his car. Always had a Barracuda, you know what I mean, with side pipes and everything. He was like one of those car guys, and he was going to school up in Connecticut for car, and his roommate in his dorm lived in this little town up in the middle of the woods up in Connecticut, the Berkshire Mountains.
Yeah.
And he used to tell Harry about this mansion that was in the middle of the woods that belonged to this rich family. I mean, like, Rockefeller rich kind of family, from the old country. And he said, nobody goes there. Nobody goes on the property. Everybody's afraid of it. Nobody in the town goes near it. Just to get from the road to the house, it's like a mile driveway, So he's telling Harry this, and Harry's like, "Oh, Al, we gotta go. So I said, okay, I'll come up with Eddie one weekend up to you, and then from you in Connecticut, we'll go up there." So we drove. Eddie had a Nova, and we drove up to Harry's house. I mean, the school. We left Eddie's Nova there, and then we jumped in Harry's Barracuda, and we went to this town to meet his friend. We roll into town, and it's like Mayberry. You know what I mean? One road, and we said, he said, "I'll meet you at the diner." It's okay. We go to the diner. We get to the diner. It's late in the afternoon, like 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like 6 o'clock. And the sheriff sees the Barracuda outside and comes in the diner and says, "Whose car is this?" Because he sees the New York plates on it. We're in Connecticut. Yeah. And Harry goes, "It's my car," and he's like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing in my town?" And we thought this was kind of weird, like, why is the sheriff asking us what we're doing in his town? We could just be driving by, Yeah. And Harry says, "Oh, I'm waiting for so-and-so. We go to school together, and, whatever, Stanford or wherever they were in Connecticut, they went to school, and Stratford, I don't know what it was." And he said, we just invited us up for the weekend. We're going to hang out with him. He said, "Oh, okay, yeah. Okay." So then a kid came in, said hello to the sheriff, and said, "Yeah, no, they're coming to my house. We're going to hang out. Yeah, yada, yada, yada." So the kid took us to this road. He says, "I'm not going down this road." He says, "You guys can go down this road." He says, "But I'm not going down this road." I said, "Okay." So again, he left us at that point, and we went down this road. For it seemed like it took forever to get to the house. The closer we got to the house, the worse vibes I got. I felt like it was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I told Harry, I said, "You know what, let's just turn around. Let's get the hell out of here, man. We don't need to go into this house." And him and Eddie were like, "No way. Look at the size of this place. It's a mansion, We're definitely going in, So I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm not going in." I said, "I'm not going in." I said, "If you guys want to go in." I gave Eddie one of my cameras, and I gave Harry a camera. I had like 3 or 4 cameras, like being a photographer, I had like 5 different cameras. And they went in, and I walked the grounds, and I was just taking pictures of the house from the outside. The house was there was a lake there. They had a boathouse, beautiful beach on the lake, beautiful lake, massive pool, massive. And I'm standing by the pool, and I'm taking pictures of the upper floors. And I swear to God, it looked like it had to be 6 stories high, this house,
Yeah.
And taking pictures of it. And I hear Eddie and Harry screaming. So I run to the front to see what's going on. I thought maybe the cops were there, Yeah. And I run to the front, and Harry's shirt is ripped off his back, and he's got scratches on his back, and Eddie's like all disheveled, right? Got his head, he's got a big bump on his head. I was like, "What's going on?" He said, Harry goes, "I went down in the basement, and there was a room down in the basement. It looked almost like some kind of ritual room with an altar and all this crazy stuff. I guess they would maybe have called it a game room with like the deer heads and stuff like that on the walls. But Harry said it looked like an altar, like something like that they would do black magic, he said. And something grabbed me and ripped my shirt off my back and then pushed me. And when it pushed him, he said he went flying like he's never been pushed before, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry's nickname was Dirty Harry. So when you fought Harry, you could expect to get, you know, something dirty happening to you. He said, ripped and scratched him on the back. Eddie went upstairs and he said, Al, when you walked in the foyer, everything was marble. He said the steps were about 20 feet wide. You could drive a tractor trailer up them, all marble, he said. There was chandeliers, there was paintings. Nobody from that town went in that house and touched it. Like the kids from the town didn't hang out there and party. There was no graffiti. It looked like the people were still living in it, he said. He said, I don't understand how no one would go in. Like in our neighborhood, everybody would have robbed that place blind. You know what I mean? With the, you know what I mean? And Eddie said something grabbed him on the top of the steps and threw him head over heels down these marble steps. He said, you know, he said, I held on to your camera, Al, so it wouldn't break, you know, but he says, something threw me down. So I said, let's get the hell out of here. So we got in this Barracuda, and Harry blew through that town at 125 miles an hour. We couldn't get to New York fast enough. When I went back to school that weekend, that Monday, and I developed all the film and all the cameras. Again, there were orbs and white mist and white streaks of light that, you know, just didn't know what the hell they were, you know. Wasn't even going to theorize on it, what it could possibly be. But in one of the photographs that I took on the outside, there was a woman in black looking out the window watching me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so when I developed that picture, we used to hang out in the woods down in the Bronx called Van Cortlandt Park. It's a huge park, huge park. The Van Cortlandt family owned the park. They owned the land. They donated it to the park. There was bridle paths down here and horse trails and all kinds of stuff. And they had their own family plot down there. And it was surrounded by like 10-foot stone walls with 10-foot iron gates.
Yeah.
Well, I climbed over those stone walls and I went over to like the old lady, like the matron of the house, right? The mother of the family. And I dug a little hole and I put that picture in there with her because I figured rich people want to be with rich people, right? You know?
Yeah.
And I buried it in that plot with the old lady from the Van Cortlandt family. I said a prayer over it and I got over that wall and I got out of there and I left that photograph there because I didn't want any of that energy hanging around me in my house, you know?
Yeah.
So you know, with my friends, we actually did another ghost investigation, again, going up to my girlfriend's house. There was a train that used to run from the Catskills down to the city, pick the people up and bring them, because back in the 50s, and the Catskills was the place to be, you know? And it was a horrible derailment. The train fell off the tracks, rolled down the hill, people died, and they just kind of left this skeleton of a train there in the woods, you know?
Yeah.
And we went there one time as well. So we did a couple of ghost stuff up in the Catskills and that one ghost thing up in the Berkshires, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at that point, Bigfoot wasn't I didn't think Bigfoot was in New York. You know, I really didn't think he was here. You know, we were doing more ghost stuff than anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was just easier to find places like that. You know, there was a lot of burnt out remnants of hotels in the Catskills from the 40s and 50s that we could have hit one right after the other if we wanted to, you know. But every time I would find something in one of my photographs, I just felt like I don't want this thing hanging around me. You know what I mean? It felt like if I didn't do something respectful to this photograph, this energy, whatever it is going to be attached to me. And I did not want it attached to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. When did Bigfoot come up on your radar up there? What like instigated it?
Okay. There's a place up here called Nuclear Lake. It's a lake um, what's it called? United, United something. United. There was a company that was mining uranium here. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a federal land. They were mining uranium. It was and they were processing it on the lake, turning it into weapons grade uranium. You know, they had a processing plant on the lake, and I didn't really know this whole backstory to this place. Friend of mine told me to go there one time. It was good fishing, he said, and nice hiking trails. The Appalachian Trail ran through it. And I would take my son. I had a 125-pound German Shepherd, and we would go hiking, through there all the time. You know, me and my son and the dog. Sometimes we fish. We never caught. I wouldn't eat anything that came out of a lake called Nuclear Lake. You know what I mean? Yeah. United Core, something Core. That was the name of the company. Anyway, while they were refining the uranium, the processing plant blew up and ended up in the lake. Okay. Yeah. So the government came in, spent millions of dollars cleaning up the lake, sealed the mine. That was the end of the mining thing there. It's a high rate of cancer in that area. Yeah. And so I was familiar with the place, and I heard my neighbor, who's a local guy, born and raised up here, and I heard him talking to a couple of his friends. They're all hunters. He has a drag race. He's got a racing car in the driveway, you know. And I was hanging out with him one time, and we were talking about his dragster, and a couple of his friends rolled up. They were hunters, and they were like, "Hey, you're never gonna guess what happened to us. We were hunting the Appalachian Trail. You know, we were coon hunting, you know." And he's like, "Oh yeah," and I said, "Yeah." We had the dogs, they had red bone hounds, these big coon dogs, and so I'm just sitting there eavesdropping, listening to it, right? And they're telling my neighbor about how they came out off of the Appalachian Trail, and they ended up on the mining road to the lake. And they said as they were walking up, because they were going to take the mining road to where it ends and then go back onto the Appalachian Trail. And they were walking towards this little area that everybody calls the campsite. It's like a clearing where people would camp out at the lake. You're not supposed to be at the lake after night in the dark. There's a ranger station at the front of the lake. It's a federal park, but there's no signs for it. It's gated, and they have actual rangers on station 24/7, 365 days a year, and they'll patrol the lake to the end of the mining road every night. Yeah. So anyway, these guys were on there. It was after the patrol. Like they think they do their last patrol at 11. So they were on there around 12, and they were passing. They were just coming up on, like we call the campsite, when the dogs stopped and wouldn't go any further. And they were like, "What's wrong with the dogs?" You know. Yeah. And then they started getting rocks thrown at them. And they're thinking, "What the hell's going on? The dogs won't go any further." And so they think it's high school kids fooling around with their girlfriends, and they don't want these guys catching them, right? Yeah. So they say, "Hey, listen, if you don't stop throwing rocks at us, we're gonna sick the dogs on you." You know, and these two big red bone hounds. You know, you don't want to get attacked by them, right? Right. And more rocks kept coming at them. So they said, "Go get them." They told the dogs to go get them. Mm. They could have scared the shit out of these kids. The kids will come running out saying, "Stop, stop." So, well, the dogs got about halfway and they stopped dead. Then they turned around and they ran past the two hunters, and they ran all the way back to their car, which was like 2 miles away. Okay. Non-stop with their tails between the legs. So these two guys look at each other like, "What the hell is over there?" You know. Now they got small guns like 22s because they're hunting, you know, well, what you call it, coons, you know. Yeah. They're not carrying big, powerful rifles. So another rock comes at him, and he says, if you throw another rock at me, I swear to God, I'm going to put a round into the tree." Another rock comes out. He puts a round into the tree. Says, 7-foot Sasquatch stepped out and screamed at him.
Oh, man.
He said at that point, one guy dropped his gun. The other guy just took off running. They ran back to the truck. When they got to the truck, the dogs were underneath the truck. They threw the dogs in the truck. They drove off. They left the rifle there, left it right in the middle of the trail. They said, "The hell with it." And then one guy said he'll never go back, and the other guy said, "I still hunt it, but I don't go out to the lake anymore. I stay away from the lake, you know." But so I heard this, and I was like, I got to do a little research here. I'm not a big researcher by trade. I'm more an investigator, experiencer. But when I have to do research, I do. So I start researching the Appalachian Trail, and I coming across more and more Bigfoot experiences on the Appalachian Trail up here and at that campsite, you know. And that's how we got started researching the Bigfoot up here, you know.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I found what I call the sacred site by accident. Yeah, there's a sacred, I call a sacred site. It's very strange. It's off trail, about maybe a mile off trail. And you got, and the other reason I found it is because me and one of my cameramen, Bill, we were doing the Pine Bush UFO Fair that summer, right? And we had a friend of ours come in from England, this woman, Heidi. And she's a blogger from England. She covers all the paranormal symposiums and stuff, you know. And she says, "Al, show me Bigfoot. I want to see a Bigfoot den or the structures or something, you know. We don't have them in England." So I said, okay. So Bill and I took her to Nuclear Lake. And that particular summer, we had a drought in New York. So we were actually able to get deeper into the swamp where the swamp was dried up. Yeah. And we were sitting in the swamp, and I'm showing her a big tree structure. And I'm saying, this is what the big ones do. This is a tree structure. And she's taking pictures. And I showing her little ones on the ground that the juveniles do, copying the parents, you know? Yeah. So and Bill's filming, because Bill's always filming. He's the camera guy. He's always filming. He puts his camera down on a log, and he says, "Man, the mosquitoes are eating me alive." He's getting the bug spray out, and you can hear him spraying himself, and I'm spraying myself. You can hear me talking, and you can hear Heidi talking. Heavy English accent. You can't mistake her. She's spraying herself down. And as we're walking, there must have been a fire in the woods that winter. And I seen what looked like a stone cairn up on top of a hill. Now, this particular woods has these stone cairns all over the woods. And the first time I seen them, it freaked me out. I thought I was in Blair Witch, right? But I see this stone, what looks like a stone cairn, way up on top of this hill. So I said, "Bill, zoom in on that thing. Let's see what the hell it is." So he zooms in on it, and he's like, "Holy crap, Al, look at this thing." So he goes, "How the hell are we going to get up there? Because it's all burnt out, you know?" I said, "Follow me." And I just made a beeline up the side of this mountain. I just chopped everything out of my way with my machete, all the dead bushes and everything, get up to the top. And we get up to the top, and there's a plateau. It turns out to a giant plateau. It's like 200 yards in a circle with these giant megalithic stones set up in a circle with hundreds of stones on top of them. Oh my God. When you get up there, there's arches and X's and bends and breaks and trees pinned down on the other trees. And we're filming all this. So we decided to call a friend of ours, this Dr. Rita Louise. She's like an archaeologist, right? So we call Dr. Rita, and we say, and we're FaceTiming her. And she's looking at these stones, and she's like, "Where are you guys, in England, Ireland?" You know, we're like, "No, we're in New York." She's like, "Oh my God, you found a megalithic site," you know? And we're looking at it, and it was just, I said, "I'm coming back here." The energy of this place was just so relaxing. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not the type of guy that would sleep outside in a sleeping bag. I need to be in the tent because snakes freak me out. Okay. Yeah. Well, this location, I could sleep underneath this arch in just a sleeping bag and not worry about anything messing with me. That's the kind of energy there. Right. So anyway, Bill goes back to his house. He's watching the video. And when he put his camera down on the log to get the spray out, he heard a woman's voice call his name twice. It said, Bill. And it freaked him out. He calls me up. He says, dude, we captured an EVP in the swamp. It said my name twice. And he played it for me. And I was like, he goes, I said, well, what are you freaking out for? This is what we do. You know, this is why we investigate. Yeah. He goes, yeah, but they said my name, not yours, you know? And everybody thought it was Heidi, like everybody who listened to it. But Heidi's got such a heavy English accent. Yeah. And this woman had a soft, very soft-spoken whisper kind of voice, you know, and she was calling to him. I don't know who it was. I have my theories, but he says no. But so we got this amazing Class A EVP. There's no doubt about what this thing says. It's that clear, crystal clear. We didn't even know we had it. So we found this location. So I went back and I called my psychic who lives in Arkansas. She reads everything through me. She says, I'm a conduit. And she said, okay, this site was built by white men in robes thousands and thousands of years ago. Whoa. She said, these woods have an energy to them like I've never felt in my life. She's fifth generation psychic. Her grandmothers are Native Americans. Mm-hmm. She said she's never felt energy like this place. She says the Native Americans believe it's a sacred site because they've seen the star people coming in and out of the mountain and in and out of the lake. There have been people there seeing UFOs siphoning water out of the lake. There have been balls of light that come in and out of the lake. Native Americans use this location as a sacred site, and now the Sasquatch use it as a sacred site.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more. I've done so many expeditions there, and every time I go there, something different happens, and there's a lot to it. But that's how I started investigating there, and I found the sacred site by accident. And every time we go there, I always take people who are not on the team with me to validate my experiences because, you know, they're not going to lie for me. They have no reason to lie for me. I make everybody sign a confidentiality clause and a clause. What do you call that? If you get injured, you can't sue me. I forgot what they call it.
Right, liability, and then NDAs for being able to talk about it.
Right, and every time I've gone there, every single time I've gone to the sacred site, something has happened every single time, and I've been there many, many, many times.
Yeah,
and but I have like 5 other locations now that I'm working. You know, different times of the year at different locations. You know, so I haven't been to the sacred site in 2 years, but I've been back. I did go back this summer, but I've been working all these other sites, and you could only spend so much time at each place, you know. And I can't do this full time. I'm not independently wealthy, you know. So, yeah, and it's just mind-boggling. I mean, the stuff that happens there. I brought a guy there. He was an Alphabet Agency friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We had an experience there. Blew his mind. Okay. I took a couple of ghost hunting women there. Yeah. It was on their bucket list. Not to get into the whole story, but long story short, they've crossed it off their bucket list. They won't even go in the woods for a picnic anymore. They won't even go to the park for a picnic anymore. Yeah. That's how crazy it was, you know? And like I said, every time, and I just went there this summer with Chris Reinhardt from Discover Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And we had a crazy experience there. And we didn't even stay the whole night because it got really, really cold. And he was like, his teeth were chattering, you know, and I couldn't get him warm. I had hand warmers and all kinds of stuff, but he was cold to the core, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't want him to get pneumonia being out in the woods because he wasn't dressed properly. So we left early. But even though we left early before it got dark, but we were still there for 4 hours, and we did experience a whole array of things, you know, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's amazing.
Um, the white robes on the hill, right? The megalith structures. What do you, I mean, do you have a theory about that? Could it be like, like almost like druids from the north,
Well,
like
yeah,
the Norsemen?
she said white men in black robes. That's what she said. But we have these structures here in the Northeast called ancient stone chambers. Okay, and they're all over the Northeast, from New Hampshire to Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
I think it's the further south they go, and they call them up here. They call them colonial root cellars. That's the
Okay,
official thing, but
sure.
they're not root cellars because A, they're above ground and root cellars are below,
Yeah.
and B, they're made with megalithic stones that weigh 10 tons when the colonial farmers built houses out of wood. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
And my psychic says, again, she says they're portals to different dimensions. She says that again they were built by white men in robes. They're very, I believe personally, they're built on ley lines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're built on ley lines that have aquifers running underneath them, and she says their doorways are portals where things come in and out of, and they were used for religious ceremonies and stuff like that. And
Sure.
I was in one of them once by myself, and well, no, I was with my partner Brian that day, and we were asking all kinds of questions like, who built this? Was it Romans? Was it Vikings? Was it Egyptians?
Yeah.
And we were getting no response. And then I mentioned the word Phoenicians,
Ah,
and the meters went absolutely crazy. All the meters lit up when I said the word Phoenicians. Now, we were trying to go through the list of all the ancient builders that built with stone. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And when we got to Phoenicians, all the meters we had lit up, went crazy. So then I asked how many of these. No, that was at one. That's this particular chamber is on a Native American mountain, sacred mountain called Ninum Mountain. And then I was there again by myself. Brian wasn't with me this time. And this particular chamber has like an altar in the back of the chamber.
Oh
And
boy.
I was in there, and I figured I'll sit down on the altar and I'll do some EVPs. And I went in there, and as I went in, I felt the touch of a small woman's hand on my arm. Like
Oh,
someone had put their hand on my arm, right?
yeah.
And, of course, I got chills down my whole body. And I said to myself in my head, relax, Al, this is what you're here for, And the image that came to my mind's eye when I was being touched was a young and Native American female.
Okay.
And I asked her, I said, I had my digital voice recorder going. I said, how many chambers are in this area? And on my digital voice recorder, I got like 17 taps. Like
Yeah.
she tapped the microphone 17 times. So
Mhm.
we know there are 17 chambers in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were there one time, was there with a group of friends. Before I put the team together, I was going out with friends from work. Hence the name, the Bronxville Paranormal Society, because I worked in a town called Bronxville.
Mhm.
And all the guys I went with were all mailmen like myself. And we all went out and we did these investigations. Well, we were at this chamber with my cousin and her boyfriend and a bunch of other people, and a couple that were invited by other people. There was one woman who claimed she knew everything about every chamber. And we were at this one particular chamber, in the mountain chamber, and we were doing all of our stuff, and we were underneath the doorway. And in the doorway, if you put like a compass in the middle of the door, the compass just spun uncontrollably. Just
Okay.
uncontrollably, the compass spun. And we were doing all this stuff, and a group of people were walking by, like a young group of kids, like teenagers. And they said, "Hey, are you guys one of those paranormal teams you see on TV?" And I turned around and I said, "Yeah, we're the Bronxville Paranormal Society." Just spit it out. And that's how the name came about, because
Yeah.
everybody I worked with we all worked from Bronxville. Even my cousin lived in Bronxville, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we were all from Bronxville. And everybody's like, "Oh, that's a cool name, BPS."
Yeah.
And so we were in there, and my cousin was in there. with we were going in groups of 5 because there was a lot of us, like 15. And my cousin was in there with this other girl that worked with me, another woman who was a male lady. And the woman came out, the male lady came out and said, "Al, you got to go in there. Your cousin's having a breakdown." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, we're all in there and we're hearing guitar playing. Like we can hear a guitar playing." And she goes, "There's nobody on because the roofs of these chambers are all like mud and grass, you know?" So she's like, "There wasn't anybody on top of the roof with a radio or something." Right? It's like, "No, there's just us. You know, there's nobody here, nobody on top of the roof. I mean, we're doing our experiments around the location, but there wasn't anybody on the roof and nobody was playing a radio." Because, "Well, we hear guitar playing and your cousin's freaking out." Yeah. So I went in to talk to my cousin. And we were there, and hand to God, everybody went out. It was just me and my cousin in there, and we're sitting in there, and I didn't hear any guitar playing. And then all of a sudden, we heard like a bass line, doom, 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 and it felt like it was coming out of the rock. The rock was vibrating.
Whoa!
And I looked at her. And she looked at me and she just started crying hysterical. And I grabbed her and I walked her away from everybody. I must have walked her like a quarter mile away. Her brother had just passed away. My cousin had just passed away. And he played guitar in one band and bass in another.
Yeah.
And he was letting her know that he was okay. It was a message. And I told her, I said, "You know, this is a message for you, right?" She goes, "I know who it is loud and clear. You don't have to." And she was like, "Thank you for taking me today." Because she's a lawyer by trade. She doesn't really not into the paranormal, but I kind of talked her into going. And she's like, "Al, thank you. Can't thank you enough for taking me because I got a message today that'll stick with me for the rest of my life, you know?" And and like I said, my psychic says it's a doorway. They're portals and all kinds of stuff comes in and out of them. And we found that particular day, we went to another chamber, and my brother said to me, "Bring your night vision goggles." And I said, "For what? I'm going during the day, you know?" "Just bring your night vision goggles. Just bring them." I was like, "Okay." At the time, I didn't have an IR camera, a UV camera, or a thermal camera. I didn't have any of that stuff. You know, I was going out with like the bare minimum, you know, all the old school stuff. And so I had the night vision camera. So we're all in this other chamber, which is much, much bigger at a different location. What I did find out was, which was weird, no matter where the chambers were, whether they were in the middle of a field, in the sun, or underneath a tree canopy, they're all 60 degrees. All of them, every single one of them. Don't know why that is, but they're all 60 degrees. So we're in this one chamber. And then I said, "Oh, wow, I got my night vision goggles. I forgot to look." And this one woman standing next to me, giving me the history of all the chambers. She knew everything about everything, yada, yada, yada. I look up with the night vision goggles, and there across the back of the wall are all these ancient symbols.
Ooh.
You can't see them with your naked eye. You can't get a picture of them in regular. You can't put a flashlight up against them. You can. And when I seen those, I went absolutely crazy. She was so excited that she was choking me, trying to get the binoculars off my neck so she could see, because she knew everything about everything, but she had no idea these things were there. Yeah. And so she's seen them, and then we passed the binoculars around everybody so everybody could see. And we tried to get them. At the time, like I said, I didn't have an IR camera or anything like that, so we couldn't get any images. But we did go back later, me and my partner Brian, and with the right equipment, and we did get photographs of all of them. And Brian researched them, and Brian's brilliant, especially when it comes to research and in computers, like a computer whiz beyond. I touch a computer, it blows up. He could do all kinds of crap with it. And he researched it, and he found out that all of those symbols are ancient symbols from different people. Like there's Chinese symbols, there's Arabic symbols, there's Native American symbols, there's Egyptian symbols, but they're all in this one big section of this wall. We couldn't figure out what they meant, because separately you could figure out, well, this means this and this means that, but it didn't make any sense when you put them all together. At least to us, we couldn't figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
And we were in there one day. We went in there. We were gonna. I was invited to a symposium, and I was sitting at the table with this guy David Roundtree. Now David is an electrical engineer. I don't know if you know who David is, right? Okay, well, he's an electrical engineer. He does a lot of stuff with energy in the paranormal field. So I said to him, I said, Dave, let me ask you a question. How do you know if a portal opens up? You know, how do you know? And he says, Alan, you know how you know? The radiation level goes through the roof. When the radiation level goes through the roof, you know the portal has opened up. So I said, okay, thank you. Told Cole, I said, Brian, we're going back to the chamber. We're going to try some stuff. We go back to the chamber. I have a Geiger counter. We go in. We do a radiation check. No radiation, just ground radiation, nothing, you know. We're filming in thermal. We're filming in IR. We're filming in UV. We're filming in everything. And I break out a Tibetan singing bowl, and I start filling the chamber up with frequency and vibration, and I'm going faster, and it's radiating in the stone, and this stone is ringing like a bell, and all of a sudden my tongue is tingling, my teeth are tingling, my gums are tingling, my fingers are tingling, and we're filming, and I'm standing with my back to the door, and Brian's filming in thermal, and I'm filming in IR. I'm filming him in IR, he's filming me in thermal. And something peeked out of the stone, like something. It wasn't on the other side of the door looking in, it was on the inside of the door. But when it peeked out to take a look at us, it went right in the door jamb. So Brian's seen its silhouette.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, something just peeked out at us, you know? And we turned around and we felt the stone and we did this and we checked the radiation level and it was through the roof. And he's like, dude, we got to get out of here. We're in a danger zone, you know? And I was like, I didn't want to go because we were having so much experiences, but I was like, okay, you know, if it's dangerous, then we got to go. So we left, you know, and we went to another chamber. And again, with the IR camera, which was a weird chamber. It was built like a dome, right?
Yeah.
But it had a little tiny door, like a 3-foot door. All the other ones, the doors are 5-6 feet high. Yeah. It had a little tiny door. So I did some research on this chamber because it was weird looking, you know. I didn't like the vibe I was getting from it. And it turns out that there was a guy who lived in that neighborhood. And he was walking his dog. He had a little lap dog. He was walking his dog along the road back there. And then these areas or these houses are built in the woods, and there's no streetlights, no nothing. He's walking his little dog with a flashlight, and he sees 3 small figures with red eyes floating above the ground because he hit it with the flashlight. Right?
Yeah.
They're floating and they're going inside that little doorway. They fit perfectly inside that little door. So he picks up his dog and he runs home. He said, "The hell with that." Yeah. So then I come across another kid, you know, college kid, played football on the college team, big kid, you know, a tank of a kid. He's coming home from a friend's house one night, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, watching Monday Night Football or something. He's got a flashlight. And he sees like a 6-foot guy with red eyes in a robe go into the chamber. And he goes, oh, no. He goes, I'm not going to, these guys are not going to do any devil worshiping in my neighborhood, right? Because I'm going to go and I'm going to kick these guys' ass.
Yeah.
He goes in the chamber with his flashlight and he doesn't see anybody. And he knows, he's just seen the 6-foot guy walk into the chamber and he's looking around, doesn't see anybody. All of a sudden, he gets tackled and bounced off the wall. And he said, I was fighting an invisible force. I had it in a headlock and I was smashing it in the head with my flashlight. And I go, what were you fighting? And he goes, the only way I could describe it is that it was a creature, he said. It wasn't a human. He said, hit me with a force that was so hard that it knocked me out. He woke up on his back like a half hour later.
Yeah.
Flashlight still in his hand, still working, thankfully. He looked around and he said, let me get the hell out of here. And he left. Yeah. So we were getting ready to go do that chamber with the whole team. And I never tell my psychic what I'm going to do. Just whatever happens. She calls me and she says, what are you guys up to? She goes, I had a bad dream. I had a bad vision. What are you guys up to? So I told her we're going to the ancient stone chambers, and she's okay, stop. There's one chamber that looks like a dome shaped. She goes, it's a dome shaped chamber with a little door. She says it's got dark energy attached to it. There's 2 guys on the team that can't go. And she goes, give me their first names and I'll tell you who they are. So I went through a list of everybody that was going. And she said, okay, these 2 guys can't go. And I go, why? And she says, because they have subconscious fear. And if they go there, something will attach to them. So I said, well, can't they just come and hang out in the woods and take pictures from afar? Because I know when I tell these guys they can't go, they're going to get pissed, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to be the reason why somebody gets something dark attached to them,
Sure.
So she says no, because whatever attached to that chamber, whatever was in that chamber is not attached to it. It's attached to the land, so it can go anywhere. So if they're in the woods, they're going to stand out like a beacon in the night, and these things is going to attach to them. So I told these 2 guys they couldn't go. They weren't happy, but I said, look, dude, you can be mad at me all you want, but I'd rather you be mad at me than me feel guilty for you having something dark attached to you for the rest of your life,
Right.
And they understood. And we went there, and it was a creepy chamber, man. It had a dark vibe to it. And as we're checking out, we're taking pictures, we're doing all kinds of stuff with all different kinds of spectrums of light. And I hit it with a UV flashlight. And when I hit it with the UV flashlight, there was an image of like the devil's head, but it was like chiseled in like stone, like almost something you would see in ancient Rome, right?
Yeah.
But if you touched the stone was smooth. If you shut the UV flashlight off, it wasn't there. If you hit it with a regular flashlight, there was no chisel marks. There was nothing there, and it was smooth. You hit it with the UV flashlight, and there it is. And I guess somebody must have been doing dark shit in that chamber, or something came through that chamber and decided this was going to be its doorway, to this realm. And just labeled it for its own. But it's a weird chamber because, like I said, every other chamber is built like almost like a C or a U with a 6-foot door. This thing is built like a dome, and it's got like a 3-foot door. It's just weird, just crazy. Yeah, and I mean, and it's so. My psychic says they were all built by ancient white men in robes, thousands and thousands of years ago, and they're all on ley lines. Now we've also researched it. We find they all line up to like the summer solstice and the winter solstice. So the sun comes in no matter, the way these things are built. We figured that out as well. But we also figured out, and I said, there's got to be something with this particular area that's built in, because not only are these chambers there's UFOs at this place. This place. They go in and out of the lake. There's Dogman. There's Bigfoot. There's also a giant Chinese, what do you call that? Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's humongous, built on this along this ley line. And right next to that, maybe a quarter mile away, is a giant Catholic monastery. So all of these things are built right along this ley line, and there's no way that's a coincidence.
No.
Whoever built these chambers knew about the energy grid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so did the Buddhists, and so did the Catholics, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy. It just, there's so many areas up here, like Dutchess County where I live. When it was settled by the Dutch, they called it the Devil's Playground because there was so much paranormal activity.
Oh boy. Yeah,
Yeah, they call.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, I've studied a little bit about ley lines and energy. There are certain places on the planet that just have that sort of opening, where the veil is a little thinner than normal. About the Catholic monastery, I would love to go into the Vatican library,
Yeah. Oh my God.
because
Yeah.
I bet you there is just wings of
Oh
the
my God.
library,
I got a
dedicated.
book. It's like this thick. It's like Secrets of the Vatican Library. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, and I'm sure that doesn't even touch the tip of the iceberg. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I met my wife, I was actually in seminary to become a priest, right? And
Oh wow. Yeah.
remember talking to somebody who had been, and studied in Rome and had been in service over there for a while. And he was like, yeah, you hear murmurings and like people talking a little bit. He goes, man, he goes, all I know is I was told that if I was actually given access down there, it would blow your mind and it would change forever how you feel about Christianity. And
Oh,
I'm
I'm
like,
sure.
oh geez, because I mean, I was a history major, and that's where I got my degree in. And so whenever you talk about history, and especially the Vatican, man, I'm like, I would love to go on a field trip down
Yeah. If
there.
I could go back in time, my first stop would be the library in Alexandria.
Yes, yes,
That would be my first stop. And
yeah,
then everything that they didn't burn in Alexandria that they brought to Rome,
yep,
Rome would be my second stop because then Nero burnt all of that stuff as well. And whatever didn't burn in
yeah,
Rome is in the Vatican. You know what I mean? So
right, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I've
So,
also heard another stronghold with that is Ethiopia. That the
okay.
that the Ethiopian church actually brought when Rome was sacked, or not Rome, but when in Judea, when the Roman Empire, they sacked them, and of course they moved a lot out.
Yeah.
Of course, the rumor is, they moved the Ark of the Covenant down in Ethiopia,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
a lot of sacred sort of,
Scriptures.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love that as one of my bucket list places, because they're where they say they have the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They have these priests that
Yep.
overwatch the area that you're not allowed into, and
Yep.
every single priest dies young, and
Yep.
they go blind.
They go blind. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always wondered,
Yeah.
man, what sort of radiation or what sort of
Yes,
force
it's
gives
definitely
up?
radiation. Yes, absolutely. I agree. I've seen all the specials he ever did about that little church in Ethiopia
Yeah,
and what they're guarding in there. And considering it's a tiny little church with a little wrought iron fence around it,
hmm
surrounded by a Muslim world,
hmm
no one has ever gone in there. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
would think the Muslims would have kicked everybody. They would have sacked that church, but they don't go near it now.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the heart of Islam, they still believe in the
Yeah.
monotheist.
Abraham. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I'm sure they would have reverence and or be a little scared of something like that.
Oh,
You
I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's amazing through history that's not more talked about, right? It's kind of a uh,
Yeah. That's just there. It's like everybody blows it off like it doesn't exist. Yeah. You'll
right,
never hear governments talk about it. Yeah.
right. So Al,
I'm sure the Germans probably will try to get there,
oh
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an Indiana Jones movie with that
Yeah, I'm
sucker,
sure
right?
the Germans were probably trying to get into that church for
I
sure.
bet.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
bet. Yeah, they're
yeah.
Eteria and then Ethiopia. Remember the Italians right before World War II tried to go down in there, and it's always made me wonder why there.
Yeah.
Why are they going
Ethiopia.
down? Yeah, into
Yeah.
that. What's their goal? You
No,
know, it
yeah.
makes me wonder, maybe someone was looking for something.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I'm sure. I'm
you
sure
know,
someone was looking for something. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I know we went all over the place tonight. We started with Bigfoot and we went all over the place, but we just went where it's the momentum took us. But I mean,
Sure.
I hope it's a good. I don't know what time it is. I don't know how much time you got left, but
Oh, and
I hope.
in your time it is 9:54.
Okay.
So it's yeah, 6:54 out here. Yeah, I mean there is so much still that we haven't even talked about Dogman yet.
Oh yeah, we're 2 hours into it. We haven't even. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
No,
rambled so
no.
much. Yeah.
This is great, man. This has been an awesome interview. You have to come back for part 3 because
Absolutely. Yeah.
Don,
Whenever you want me. Yeah. We still got to get to Dogman. We didn't even talk about UFOs either. You
no,
know what I mean? You don't even, yeah.
right.
You don't know the half of it with that too, as
Oh
well.
yeah.
But I mean,
Oh
that's a
yeah.
whole nother show.
Right.
Yeah.
We're a whole nother couple shows. It's gonna be
Yeah.
like a mini series.
Yeah. It's funny because every time I do something with somebody, it always becomes like a mini series. Yeah. And
Right.
I try to stay focused. I try to stay focused. Let's just talk about this tonight, and then we'll
Yeah.
talk about this next time. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's got a life of its own, and it goes
Yeah.
where it wants to go.
Yeah, that's what what I've learned along the way is each interview has its own life, right? And
Hmm.
my always thing was get the hell out of the way,
Hmm.
right? Get the
Yeah,
hell out of the way and let it go where it goes because that's where gold happens, right?
absolutely.
And
Yes.
so yeah, we got to get you on again because I've got I've got 1,100,129 more questions for you. But man,
Absolutely. Yeah. Whenever you're ready, you let me know. I'll be more than happy to
you
come
got it.
back and do another show. Yeah. I mean, like I said, tonight I wasn't really sure where we were going to go. Then we had to, we did a little talk about before the show started. Let's go down the Bigfoot thing because I think the last time we did
Yeah.
more paranormal stuff,
Yeah.
and then it just it just had its own. It took off. It had a life of its own, and it went where it wanted to go. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean it's all interesting stuff, and it's all connected. It's all connected. I had an ascension. That's what I was trying to say
Ah,
2 years ago, and that's a story all on its own. But
nice.
that's what led me to where I am today. So
Nice. Yeah, that's why I referred to you in the very beginning of the show as paranormal royalty because you've
yeah, I
had
know
so
about
many
that.
experiences in so many different areas. It's awesome, right? And so
Yeah.
I've loved talking to you now a couple times. I look forward to a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth as we end up on HBO on a miniseries. But uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, Alfred, thank you so much, man, for coming
Hey,
on.
man, Jason, no, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you for inviting me on.
Awesome.
Really, the pleasure was all mine. It
Oh
really
no.
was.
Uh, until next time, my friend.
Ciao.
Folks, wasn't that an awesome interview? I love talking to the Squatchfather. Part 3 coming soon. All right, before we ride off into the sunset here, I got some news for you. Exciting new news. Hey, we're going to be doing some live streaming soon up on YouTube. That way you guys can comment in real time and we will have a hoot. So also we're going to do some live radio streaming because I believe we should put the Midnight and Midnight Alchemy. So we're going to do some live streaming and live broadcasting over our own server. So stay tuned for that coming very soon. Hey, and as of course, you can always voicemail and leave a message for us. Tell us about guest ideas, guests that you want to hear more from, comments on the shows, and no profanity allowed. I'm kidding. No one has left any cuss words yet, so it's all good. All right. And you can also email us at midnightalchemyshow@gmail.com. midnightalchemyshow@gmail.com. Folks, it has been an honor and a privilege to do this episode with you. We will be back very soon with another episode. Last final words. Be kind to each other. And a Reaver Dare Show.